Show, the business podcast you go to get going and to get the best business strategies, tips, and lessons every single day with our daily 10-minute business lessons for the real world. I'm your host, your coach, your teacher, Omar's at home. I'm also the co-founder of the $100 MBA, a complete business training and community online. Make sure you check out our free guides on how to create a business plan, on how to create a business website, and so much more over at 100mba.net/guides. They're completely free. When you opt in for one guide, you get all 5 guides sent to you automatically via email. Today's lesson is part 1 of a 2-part lesson on how to start a clothing line business. Starting a clothing line business is a little bit different from other businesses. I should know I had my own clothing line for many years. It was one of the largest businesses I had. It was called Zenhom Designs. And in this 2-part lesson, I'm going to give you 7 steps to creating a clothing line business. I'm going to give you some options and some really great ways to start in a minimal viable fashion and to make sure you have a product on your hand that your customers actually want, and you lower the amount of risk that you're going to be taking when it comes to the investment you're going to have to make to start this clothing line. So let's get into it, guys. Let's get down to business. Today's episode of the $100 MBA Show is sponsored by Heroic Public Speaking, the live public speaking training event of the year. On February 15, 16, and 17 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the experts at Heroic Public Speaking are going to teach you how to become a better speaker on video, on camera, on a webinar, in a negotiation, on a podcast, whatever it is, you got to nail it when it comes to your communication. Grab your discounted ticket over at 100mba.net/speaking. Again, that's 100mba.net/speaking for a discounted ticket. And Nicole and I will see you there. Yes, you heard right. I had my own clothing line, and it was called Zenhom Design. And of course, Zenhom was my last name. It was high-end, custom-tailored male clothing. We sold dress shirts, casual shirts. It was a whole lot of fun. I learned a lot of lessons about business, but especially running a clothing line business. It's not as easy as it looks. But don't worry, I'm going to give you some simple steps to get started. In today's lesson, part 1 of this lesson, I'm going to cover the first 3 steps. And these are the most crucial steps. And in part 2, in tomorrow's lesson, I'll go through the next 4 steps. First of all, I want to be clear here. If you're going to be selling clothing, your only option is not to create something from scratch. You can sell other clothing that people have already made. Or in other words, you could be a reseller. You might pick up some really cool vintage clothing from your local Salvation Army or on eBay and sell it on your website. Pre-owned clothing, apparel, shoes, accessories, it's a huge market. So creating something from scratch is not your only option. Even if you sell new clothing, you don't have to necessarily create the clothing or design it. You might go to a flea market and see some really cool t-shirts from a designer and say, hey, those are really cool t-shirts. I would love to sell those t-shirts in my own business. And you can buy them wholesale. Or better yet, you can buy the rights to be a licensed producer of that clothing. Meaning you negotiate a contract with that producer or that designer and say, hey, I'd like to reproduce your clothing in a factory. I'll figure out how to do that. We'll talk about that later. I want the rights to be able to do that. How much is that going to cost me? And that's a great way for you to get started without having to be a fashion designer. Guys, I'm not a fashion designer, but I was able to run a successful business because I found people that knew fashion and I was able to leverage their designs. So I just want to say that off the bat, you don't have to create your own designs. You don't have to be a designer. You can use somebody else's designs and sell them with their permission, with a deal. You can, of course, be a reseller with used clothing, or you can be a reseller with new clothing. You can just say, hey, I would love to sell your product on my website and become, quote unquote, a distributor. But what if you want to create your own unique clothing and make it a business? How do you get started? What do you do? How do you make sure it's a viable business and it's profitable? I want to make sure I'm super clear. I'm not interested in helping people build businesses that are not profitable. There's nothing worse than building something that you love and then realizing you have to stop it because you have to eat. This is where this 2-part lesson comes into play. How to create a business that's profitable when it comes to a clothing line. So let's get started. Let's talk about step 1. Step 1 is to come up with a must-have product or item. You gotta have something that people want to wear, that's comfortable, that looks good, that's durable, that's easy to care for. You have to have the right ingredients. And the key part of this is that other people want to wear, not you. And I'm saying this out of experience. I've created shirts in my clothing line that I thought looked great. I loved them. I used to wear them all the time. And when I mass produced them and sold them on our website, I realized not everybody has my taste. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to produce something that people want. Enough people for you to stay in business. So how do you do that? That moves into step number 2, developing a design. Whether this is a graphic t-shirt, a dress, a skirt. And by the way, for a brief 6 months in the beginning of our business, we sold female clothing. But then we just focused on male clothing because we found that was our strength. So again, you got to design your item, whether it's a t-shirt or a dress or a skirt or whatever item of clothing it is. The good news is you don't need a degree from Parsons to succeed here. In fact, the first designs I created for our clothing line were just some sketched ideas on a piece of paper. And I'm not a great artist. If you completely are horrible with sketching, like you just can't even create a box, then find somebody who can, one of your friends that has a little bit of talent when it comes to sketching, and tell them your ideas and buy them some lunch so they can sketch it out for you. Tell them what you have in your mind, tell them your ideas of the design, and have them sketch it out for you in exchange for lunch. Now the point here is that you're going to start with one item. Do not start with a whole clothing line. Start with one piece of clothing. Think of it as your bestseller. Think of Chuck Taylor's. Converse makes a lot of different clothing, a lot of different shoes, but what they're known for are their Chuck Taylors. So what's your Chuck Taylor? So design one item, and in fact, just have one model of that item, meaning just one set color. Try to keep it as simple as possible. And again, this is just simply on paper. And once it's sketched down, you're going to take some notes next to the sketch. What is this made out of? How does it feel? If you don't know about materials yet, like what's the difference between cotton or polyester or linen or any of that stuff, don't worry. Write what it feels like. Is it soft? Is it thick? Is it light? How does it feel on your skin? How does it fall? Is it form-fitting? Is it baggy? Write down these descriptors next to the sketch. Who is it for? Is it for the working man? Is it for the active woman? Is it sports gear? Is it formal attire? Does it need to be wrinkle-free? Does it need to be odor-resistant? Write down these details and next to the sketch because you're going to need them for the next step. Write down some things that they're similar to. What is it similar to? For example, if you're designing a dress shirt, you might say it has the same cut as this shirt by Tom Ford, but the same collar as this shirt by Tommy Hilfiger. But the buttons are completely different. They're the buttons that you would see in a police officer's uniform. Write down any kind of likeness of the different features of that item. You're getting really descriptive here because even though you have a sketch, it's not in your hands. You got to be able to describe it as much as possible. The sketch is not a photograph. It's just a rough image. So you get the idea. So step 1 again is making sure you're coming up with an item that's unique, people really want, that's a must-have item in their wardrobe. And then step 2 is developing the design with a sketch and all the descriptors. All right, let's get into step 3. Step 3 is making a prototype. You're going to make one item, one piece of what's on your sketch. You'll need this to show your potential buyers so you can get feedback and find out if this is something they want. Now you're going to spend a little money on your prototype. It's going to be more than you expect. Prototypes are expensive. They can cost up to $500. If it's shoes, it could be even more. And of course, this depends on your materials. You see, it's a lot cheaper to create things in mass than just one-off items. So where do you create a prototype? You can check out a site called makersrow.com. They have some really great referrals to people that create prototypes for you. Another place you want to check out is Alibaba.com. Alibaba is a mass producer, but you may be able to contact one of these mass producers and say, hey, I need one prototype before you start mass producing. Maybe you'll negotiate some sort of rate where you say, hey, if you can get me a prototype and we can nail it and this is what we like, I will go with you for my first order. Now, creating a prototype may take some time, may take some weeks. But if your piece of clothing is not overly complicated, you can go to a local tailor. Yes, they still exist. Look it up on Google. And you can go with your sketches and say, hey, I'm looking to create a prototype for this shirt. You can create it for yourself so you can wear it and show people what it looks like. This is what I did. I went to a local tailor and created my first prototype, and actually created a few, and I wore them on vacation when I went to visit my family, and I got some feedback from friends and family what they think about it. And in fact, people asked me, can you make me one? I'd like to buy it. That's the kind of feedback you're looking for. If you're doing t-shirts, you can go to a screen printer that's local. It might cost you a couple $100 just to print a few t-shirts. But what you're aiming here is the highest quality possible. You'll nail the level of quality later on. But right now with the prototype, you want to make sure that you have the most pristine prototype as possible in terms of the level of quality. Now, obviously, you're going to make modifications after the first prototype, but you just got to get started so you can get some feedback. With your prototype, your job now is to get feedback. So invite your friends out to lunch. Get 5 or 6 people to touch and feel your prototype. Even put it on if they can. Have them over for dinner and let them know what you're trying to do here. You got to get in front of your product. If you're feeling embarrassed about it, you got to be more confident about what you're selling. You got to stand up for what you believe in. This is your business here. This is your product. And you want to take as many notes as possible. Check your ego at the door. Don't worry about any kind of negative feedback. You need to hear that too, because it's better for you to pivot now or realize this is not the business for you before you start throwing a lot of money into it. Guys, we got 4 more steps of the 7-part process of creating your own clothing line business. I'm going to give you a preview of tomorrow's episode, but before that, I got to give love to today's sponsor, Heroic Public Speaking. Guys, this February in Fort Lauderdale, you cannot miss the public speaking live training event of the year. This is absolutely my favorite event of the year. Nicole and I were there last year. I spoke last year, and I'm going to be there this year. If you want to become a better public speaker on camera, on a webinar, in an interview, in a negotiation, on a podcast, then you need to come to Heroic Public Speaking. The founders of Heroic Public Speaking, New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller Michael Port, and Amy Port, who has a master's at the Yale School of Acting, guarantee 100% that you'll become a better public speaker. Grab your heavily discounted ticket over at 100mba.net/speaking. And as a special bonus, if you check out with that link, send your receipt over at support@businessrepublic.net. And we're going to give you a special master course in on-camera presence on webinars taught by Michael and Amy. Again, that's 100mba.net/speaking. Grab your ticket and we'll see you there. Guys, in tomorrow's lesson, we're going to be talking about the other 4 steps, how to do them. But a quick run through here. Step 4 is going to be sourcing your materials. Number 5 is finding a factory where you can start mass producing your product. Number 6 is funding your business. How are you going to fund your clothing line business? And number 7, how are you going to sell your clothing? We get into all the details in tomorrow's lesson, so make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe so you get them all automatically. All right, guys, that wraps up today's lesson. But before I go, I want to leave you with this. There's a special sweetness to selling physical products. Selling something that somebody actually uses, puts on, and enjoys. I remember the first day I saw a complete stranger wearing a shirt that I've created and that they bought from our website. It's pretty awesome. So if this is something you really want to pursue and build a clothing line business, make sure you tune in tomorrow for part 2 of this lesson. All right, guys, I'll check you tomorrow. Until then, take care.